nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, and thanks for joining us. Government House Leader Jason Nixon outlined Alberta's fall legislative session this week. A session, Nixon says, will focus on COVID-19 recovery, jobs, and economic growth for the province. He says Alberta is poised to lead the way economically across the country.
The legislation introduced in this session will help fulfill our promise on affordable housing, conserving our environment, and bringing more transparency to infrastructure spending. I look forward to working for Albertans with my legislative colleagues in the weeks to come. Alberta's Government Caucus is working with the official opposition also to ensure MLAs are following the same practices of the public service in the Assembly. I also say that as we look around the country, Alberta's economy is strong. It looks like we are poised to have the largest economic recovery in the country, something that we intend to build on the strong piece of legislation that have come out of the legislature in the last 2 years that have focused on red tape reduction, regulatory reform to create jobs, tax reduction to attract job creators, and of course, modernizing environment enforcement around things like geothermal, hydrogen, technology and innovation and emission reduction, and of course, modernizing liability frameworks.
Nixon says it's his intention to have much of the legislation passed before MLAs return home for Christmas. Alberta's COVID-19 passport program now requires 2 doses of the vaccine. Business owners and venues participating in the program must require proof of both doses or a negative test before allowing people inside. Previously, only 1 dose of the vaccine was required. A protest for Albertans against vaccine mandates took place last Sunday at the legislature in Edmonton. Hundreds of people attended the event, including healthcare workers, frontline workers, faith groups, concerned teachers, and parents. Organizers say the protest against forced vaccine mandates is growing across the province.
Our mission is to get AHS to repeal this mandate, and so our lawsuit favors all AHS frontline workers who are affected by the mandate. So we're fighting for the freedom of thousands of frontline workers right now. Our group is one thing. We are anti-coercion. That's what we're unified and fighting against. Our members are willing to make a concession. We're saying we will get tested regularly to show you, to prove to you that we're safe to come to work.
Earlier this month, we shared the story of Haley Mock, a healthcare worker in a long-term care home in rural Alberta. She's refusing to get the COVID-19 vaccine that's mandatory to keep her job. She says she's twice shy about vaccines due to an adverse reaction from a flu shot she says caused her to end up in hospital years ago. She was unable to get a medical exemption from her doctor. Video journalist Naveen Day joins me in the studio with an update to that story. Naveen, what's the latest from Haley?
Well, Jeanette, while currently on stress leave, Mock says her supervisor sent her a text message early last week to find out if she's going to get vaccinated in order to be eligible to return to work. She feels that employees should be free from obligation while they are on leave to take care of their own health, and that employers should not be harassing their off-duty staff.
There's still other things that take precedence over your job, like your mental health and everything like that, and they really shouldn't be asking us if we're vaccinated. If I have a doctor's note to be off till December, I shouldn't be being asked if I'm being, if I've got my vaccinations or not. It's really none of their business.
Alberta Health Services did respond to my inquiry if they condone employers contacting staff while on leave. They said, AHS has been actively reminding staff and leaders of the deadlines to meet this policy and encourages all staff to submit as soon as possible. A newly hired worker or worker on an approved leave of absence will be required to provide proof of immunization before returning to work. As for Mock's future, she is utilizing her time off to look for a new career that won't discriminate against her unique situation. She says the residents at the care home are going to miss her.
I have one resident there that she calls me at 8:30 in the morning every single day to ask when I'm coming back to work, because we have a very close bond, and I've known her for a lot of years, and I go and visit her at the window, and we talk about stuff. We don't talk about COVID or anything, but it's sad to me
Mock says that she's sad that she will be allowed to visit the residents unvaccinated, but will no longer be allowed to work at the care home after the deadline to show proof of vaccination passes on November 30th. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Thanks for that, Naveen. Coming up, we speak with Lethbridge MP Rachel Harder about the Prime Minister's cabinet shuffle this past week. Stay with us. Welcome back. Lethbridge MP Rachel Harder has spoken out against the Trudeau Liberals bringing on Stephen Guilbeault as Environment Minister. Guilbeault was a Greenpeace activist in Quebec. MP Harder says the recent appointments by the Trudeau Liberals appear to show that the Prime Minister prefers foreign oil over Canadian oil. Hal Roberts sat down with Rachel Harder to get her thoughts.
Many feel that these appointments are a direct attack on our energy sector.
Well, I think this is bad news for Canada, and it really couldn't get much worse for Alberta. We're talking about a man who really is a stunt activist. We're talking about an individual who, ran around in an orange jumpsuit with Greenpeace labeled on the front of it. And he hung from the CN Tower in order to draw attention to his cause. So he has spent a lifetime basically, going after those who would develop the oil and gas sector or those who would work within the industry. It's sad. It's really sad. And, probably the biggest reason why it's sad is because instead of focusing on developing Canada's energy sector, where we do it from a place of being incredibly environmentally responsible, we have some of the strictest laws in the world. We provide people with a good wage. We treat people fairly. It's clean oil. And instead of developing our sector, really what this minister is going to choose to do is Guilbeault is then going to actually support foreign oil. So foreign, dirty blood oil that is produced with little to no ethical standard, little to no environmental standard. And really, he's then supporting the development of jobs in places like Russia or Saudi Arabia instead of developing them right here in our own country. It's a sad day for Alberta.
Now, Rachel, you recently took to social media blasting the Liberals for not giving Canadians employment insurance benefits if they lose their job due to not being vaccinated. Now, many would agree with you that it's simply wrong, but other people would say, being vaccinated is important since it really protects you and others from COVID-19.
Well, I think, first off, this is not a discussion about whether or not vaccines are good or bad. Vaccines have been proven to be effective for sure. This is actually a discussion about coercion. This is a discussion about Canadians and their right to choose. This is a discussion about respecting our fundamental rights and freedoms as described under the Charter. So when we have individuals who are willing to be tested on a daily basis, hardworking individuals who make this choice, they're willing to be tested on a daily basis. Many of these individuals have defended us on the front lines, whether that's through nursing or being a doctor or a firefighter or a police officer, a social worker, etc. Many of these individuals would prefer to do daily testing. The government is saying, no, that's not an option. And if you should lose your job because you choose not to be vaccinated, then you are not going to be able to qualify for EI, which EI is something that these individuals have paid into. It's not the government's money, it's their money. It's simply being held in trust until needed. Well, perhaps it's needed. And so it is unthinkable, it is unimaginable that the government would then usurp its authority to keep your money from you in a time of need. It's absolutely wrong.
Let's talk about one of the referendum questions on the recent ballot from the municipal election here, and it was about reforming equalization. Now, the majority of Albertans voted yes to the idea, and apparently Premier Jason Kenney says he's going to take this message to Ottawa, present it to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. But Rachel, let me ask you something. You've got the pulse of what's happening on the Hill. Do you think the Prime Minister will heed the message from Albertans and actually look into making this more of a fair deal for us?
Again, a great question and something that very much grieves me. We have a Prime Minister who really couldn't care less about the province of Alberta and even Western Canada as a whole. We have a Prime Minister who's very committed to pitting one region against another. And we see that time and time again in the legislation that he brings forward and the decisions that he makes for this country. One prime example would be Bill C-69, which is a discriminatory environmental bill that is a direct attack on Alberta and the things that allow us to prosper. Now, what's interesting enough is that the Prime Minister is more than happy to punish us for the things that deliver prosperity, such as oil and gas. However, he also still wants the money that traditionally comes with that sector. You can't have it both ways. And so I think Albertans are speaking up. Nearly 62% of Albertans said they want to see reform. They don't like the deal that we're getting right now. They don't think it's fair. And so, it is my hope that Premier Kenney is successful in being a voice on behalf of Albertans, that he's able to push for change, and ultimately that Albertans are respected for the incredible contributions that they make to this country. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, a strong Canada means a strong Alberta.
After the break, we hear from an investigator who claims there are discrepancies in the numbers Alberta Health has been presenting. Stay with us. Well, there's been information and opinions flying around about the COVID virus, and it seems we're hearing conflicting reports from so many sources when it comes to some of the numbers. For example, numbers Alberta Health has published online allegedly differ from what we've heard in press conferences. We've messaged the Health Minister's office for clarification of some of the alleged discrepancies in the numbers, but they didn't respond with an answer. We spoke with an investigator who's been tracking the Alberta Health numbers since the beginning of the pandemic and says those numbers just don't add up. Here's my interview with David Dixon. So maybe can you take us back to a few months ago when you started tracking the numbers and pointing out the discrepancies? What was the incident that got you to take a closer look at that?
It was actually the announcement by Dr. Yu that we've never had as many people in ICU. And it was this, we're about to collapse the system. This is, unbelievable. And I'd been tracking the numbers for over a year. I track all the numbers out of AHS. And that's the irony of it is probably 98% of the information I have comes from the government's public sources. I cross-reference a lot of information with AHS workers inside and various other sources I have, which typically don't align. I mean, what we see in the public is the best case scenario, whereas inside there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. But yeah, it was that one statement, and that just doesn't add up to all the information I'm getting from inside the hospital. I'm seeing daily bed numbers that don't show that we are collapsing the system, and we've never had so many. I looked at the healthcare numbers and checked back because I historically take snapshots of all that information. And I noticed that, we'd slowly been declining numbers so that we could suddenly have this, we've doubled the beds. Well, no, if you half the beds before, back in June, you haven't really doubled the beds. We're still not quite at the same height as we were. So then I went back and had a look at some of my old documents, again, public government documents. And I saw that we had less beds now than we had a year ago. And in fact, back in April of 2020, we were promised an extra 1,081 ICU beds. They never materialized. It's like, okay, well, how can we be collapsing the system at 300 odd beds, ICU beds, when we were promised not 1,081 in total, 1,081 additional fully funded beds? In fact, an MLA then started tweeting about the same information, saying, we funded those beds. Where are they? And so I know a number of people after I started putting that information out, saying, no, there's a discrepancy here between these numbers. I checked with the direct information I'm getting on beds inside the system, and they didn't add up. So it's like either Dr. Yu's lying or there's something wrong with the public figures that are being published. And then immediately after that, within days of that, the numbers on the public site changed. We suddenly completely changed. And I'm not talking about the most recent, the last few days. I'm talking about going back months. Every single metric suddenly got bumped up as if they hadn't dropped numbers. I mean, it was a complete and utter lie. I mean, and when you think that this information is being used to scare people, this sort of misinformation is it's borderline criminal.
Yeah. Now, David, I just have to ask, what was the motivator for you to be so invested in going through these numbers so meticulously, and maybe tell our viewers how the work that you're doing now relates to your past experience? You've obviously done a lot of investigation and analysis regarding the numbers from Alberta Health Services.
I'm a retired police officer. I'm a cybersecurity consultant, digital forensic investigator. I did a lot of work for Alberta Justice and the police services here in Alberta and across Canada. And one of the things through all my work, typically, if you're going to find errors in things, it's usually in the numbers, it's in published information, that's where the hide lies.
We'll have part 2 of that interview with David Dixon next week. After the break, we speak with an Alberta teacher who's gathered a group of educators to coach parents who homeschool their kids. Keep it right here.
Parents are just very happy that there's an alternative out there in terms of if they want to homeschool their kids and they're not familiar with the curriculum or what to do, we can connect them.
Welcome back. If you're looking for another option to educate your child, like possibly homeschooling, well, there's a group of teachers who are willing to help support you in that. Christian Peterson joined me this week. He's an Alberta teacher who started a project called Freedom Teachers, and they're already creating a nationwide impact. Take a look. Christian, maybe talk a little bit about this project called Freedom Teachers. What is it exactly, and how did it get started?
So Freedom Teachers is an initiative that was started by a small group of teachers that I was connected to. We were seeing an area that was needing support, and parents were already reaching out to us in our classrooms and looking for information. And things start with teachers, as they do on a regular, just wanting to help parents and students on a general level. And it kind of branched out into something much larger than what we were originally considering. The thought of parents was really with us through this process, because we know that what parents are dealing with right now, and we know that there's a lot on their plates, and we think that people really need to know that there's alternatives out there. We are not an alternative replacement for education. We are offering tutoring services basically to parents. The parents that are looking at homeschooling their kids and looking for those alternatives. And we know that there's a lot of teachers out there that are going to be looking for alternatives to supplement their income if they have to make some difficult decisions. And we are trying to connect with as many teachers as we can to be able to support and provide them with what they need to be able to continue to live in whatever capacity that looks like for different people.
And what are you hearing from parents about how their students are doing?
Well, we haven't officially started yet, but we are getting a lot of feedback from parents, all positive. People have a lot of questions, and we have a lot of information. And there's not one question that has been asked to us yet that we haven't been able to provide a prepared answer for, because we've prepared for almost every single possibility that we can. Parents are just very happy that there's an alternative out there in terms of if they want to homeschool their kids and they're not familiar with the curriculum or what to do, we can connect them. If they want to homeschool their kids and they want, to be connected with other parents, we can connect them. We're just trying to build a large community across the province and across the country, hopefully, that is connected. So that people don't feel like they're alone, because no one should feel alone the way things are right now. And this is a really good opportunity through education to connect people through a common collective.
That's amazing. So it's a huge support system. If you want to stay home and teach your kid yourself, you've got a support system of teachers that you can go to for resources, and other parents as well to kind of lean on. That's essentially what this is. So when is it going to actually start?
Well, it's going to be dependent on the situation for teachers. A lot of teachers are, like all of our teachers really basically are teaching right now still. We're waiting to see what the landscape looks like for teachers in the coming months. There are also people who are interested in pursuing an online or in-person presence or supporting teachers and parents as mandates roll out further, whatever those mandates are. People are making decisions based on the information, and I would say that there are teachers out there who aren't 100% dependent on waiting for the mandates that are coming down the pipe in December to make a decision about whether they want to be a part of this or not, because we can't always choose the timing. We just have to prepare for it, and ultimately we have to make decisions for parents, and so we're trying our best to provide and plan for when that's going to be for parents, and we know when that crucial time for parents is going to be, and that is when we are planning for curriculum rollout and connecting with parents and teachers.
Thank you so much for coming on today and for sharing this information with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
If you're on Twitter, join me at Jeanette Rocher for tweets about what we're working on. Coming up after the break, though, we'll feature some of the top local stories from around southern Alberta. Stay with us.
Bar none was definitely safety within our community. That was, if it wasn't at 90% of the doors, it was 95. It was safety within our community. And it didn't matter where we went, if it was to senior centers or at the doors or any forums, this was the comments and questions that came out.
Welcome back. 3 Blood Tribe members here in southern Alberta are not pleased with their council. The trio filed a judicial review into a vote that saw the approval of $150 million in cattle settlement money back in September. As Carson Marzouk reports, they're concerned now about how the ratification vote took place and who is in control of the money.
Blood Tribe members Roger Prairie Chicken, Eugene Fotz, and Laurie Scout have joined forces with the Band Members Alliance and Advocacy Association of Canada, asking the federal court to review a $150 million cattle settlement.
They were supposed to give reports to us on how much money we have, they have spent, where the money went, the accountability process. So what we believe is financial conflict has taken over, and these things has to be reported to the people.
The application says there was a lack of proper consultation with members before a ratification vote in September.
The Chief and Council simply produced a summary of the agreement insofar as what the terms and conditions are, and basically they're saying just take our word for it, and we say that's not good enough.
The settlement of $150 million would see each Blood Tribe member receive $3,000. The group says there has been no clear answer as to where the remaining money will be used towards.
They've established, purportedly through this agreement, to set up a trustee committee over the money. The problem with that is that 7 of the trustees that are going to be overseeing this money, 4 of them will be from the Chief and Council. So Chief and Council effectively has a monopoly over this money.
This isn't the first time members have faced financial conflict. Some members say they have yet to receive a $2,000 payment from a settlement claim back in 2019.
We need to see accountability and justice. And what this format that we're doing with this application, I do believe with BMAC, with Orla, we're on the right track and moving forward for accountability and transparency for the reserves.
Chief and Council have 10 days to file their intention to respond to the notice of application that was filed against them in the federal court. Bridge City News reached out to the Blood Tribe's communication department, but no one was available for comment. For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marzouk.
Thank you, Carson. Hundreds of people gathered at Galt Gardens in Lethbridge on Monday night to protest government restrictions and their right to freedom of choice. Micah Quinn has the details.
Over 500 people took their spots at Galt Gardens, chanting and clapping for their right to freedom of choice regarding the Alberta government's COVID-19 mandates. Shell Landry and Nick Shearer are the organizers of the Stronger Together rally. Landry says they don't want to pick a fight on who's right or who's wrong in the debate against vaccine, mask, or lockdown mandates. She went on to say the real issue they are protesting is the ability to have freedom of choice against those same government policies and mandates.
There's way more people than you think who are actually standing up for freedom and rights, and we are not the minority. So stand together and stand strong.
Stats from Alberta Health Services show that as of October 24th, 78.9% of Albertans 12 years of age or older have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19, which equals to just over 67% of the population. Shearer says he has nothing against people who want to get the vaccine or wear a mask. He's just against the way those mandates have been implemented.
I've met people that are vaccinated as well who are on the same page as us. Like they believe in the freedom of choice too, and I think there's a misconception that, you know, if you're vaccinated, you're pro mandates, and if you're not vaccinated, you're against it. But I've seen it from both people.
Similar rallies have been going on around the country in cities like Calgary, Toronto, Vancouver, and Edmonton. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Thank you, Micah. Lethbridge's new mayor was sworn in this past Monday. Blaine Higgin, a two-term city councillor, took over from Chris Spearman, who announced his intention not to seek re-election. Higgin narrowly beat out former city councillor Bridget Mearns with 43% of the vote. 8 city councillors were also sworn in, including 4 fresh faces on council. Higgin says when he was outdoor knocking during the last municipal election, the biggest concern he heard from residents in Lethbridge was safety.
Bar none, was definitely safety within our community. That was, if it wasn't at 90% of the doors, it was 95. It was safety within our community. And it didn't matter where we went, if it was to senior centers or at the doors or any forums, this was the comments and questions that came out.
Higgin says now that he's mayor, he will push to have $1 million, which was taken out of the police budget, put back in. Stay tuned after the break for an exclusive interview with Lethbridge's new Mayor Blaine Higgin and BCN's Hal Roberts.
I truly believe that our police need the funding necessary to have the resources that they need to protect our community.